All right. So I'm going to use this advanced sample project here again. It's just an office building, the same one we used for the solar study. So that's kind of the basis of what we're going to do. Again, it's just a kind of a simple architectural model, but the site is in there, the main elements, the roofs and so on, and the furniture layout. So all that stuff is useful for the design stage, but it's not so much useful when you want to actually get into how you construct the building. So I'm going to shut that down, and I'm going to use that just as the guideline for everything else. So what I'm going to do is set up a new structural template, like this. And basically this gives us a new project with a slightly different setup to the architectural project over here. We're set up with structural plans, for example, over here. So it has many things that are specific, and has families loaded that are specific to structural work and so on. So I'm just going to go to the 3D view here, and now I'm just going to link the architectural model in. We're just going to use it as a guideline for the structural work we're going to do. So I'm going to go to Insert, Link Revit, and I have it on the desktop here, so let's just go down, and there it is. And here it's very important that you insert it origin to origin. You can set up shared coordinates and all that kind of stuff. You can look that up in the help file. But just for these purposes, I'm going to set it up origin to origin. And that means is that we can link the architectural file into the structural file. We can build a structural model. And then afterwards, we can go back and relink the structural model into the architectural file again. So you can get like the fully worked out structure directly in the model, and you can deal with clash detection and so on in that model. So if we set it to origin, we know that they're going to come in the same position, in the same orientation. Just open. So now we have the architectural model inserted into the structure model, and you can see that if I try to select it there, it's all just one piece. I can't modify it without binding it into the project. So it's just like a guideline, as I say. Now we can change the visibility factors to do with it in order to give us a nice graphical representation of the structure. So I'm going to go in here to the visibility and graphics button, which is in the properties tool just beside the view here. And if you notice that over here we have a special tab that's just for links. So I can give any linked files different graphical qualities to the normal stuff you're working on in the Revit file. So I'm going to change it to halftone. And halftone means that it's just going to go grey, so it's going to be in the background. And I'm also going to change it to an underlay. And an underlay means that it's always going to display behind the structural model. It's never going to be in front of it. So that means we'll always have the structural model in the forefront, but we will have a kind of grayed out version of the architectural model behind it once we've made it. So then you press OK, and it should be kind of grayed out, something like that, when it's finished. You can just about see that. You can go in and change the grey in there. You can make it darker or lighter, but if you can see that, that's probably good enough for us now. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the elevations, elevation 1, and there's the elevation of the file. But because we've made a linked file, we have level 1 and level 2, which Revit just sets up as its standard levels. We don't need those, so I'm going to delete level 2 because it's got nothing attached to it. And level 1 I'm not going to delete, because if I delete it, it's going to delete the site as well. So we need the site. So I'm going to just select it, and I'm just going to hide it so we don't have it. So now we just have the architectural levels that you've all set up for your architectural model. But they're not usable. You can see that nothing happens if I try and select them. So we need to transfer them over to the new model. So all I'm going to do here now is I'm going to transfer all the common elements from the architectural model to the structural model, so that the guy who's working on the structures is working on the same grid setup, the same levels as the guys working on the architectural stuff, okay? And I'm going to stop after about 2 minutes so that give you a chance to do it and absorb it and ask questions, then I'm going to keep going, okay? If it's getting too much. So press collaborate, and collaborate is where you deal with all that stuff. You deal with all the work sets and so on, but we can also deal with what they call here copy and monitor. If I select this, select link, I can just zoom out a bit and make sure I select the link we want to use, which is this one. And now I have the option to copy elements from the architectural model into the structural model, and I'll just show you what I mean there. So copy, and now you can see that the elements are highlighted, so I can just select that and it thinks about it, but then it transfers that level into the structural model as well. So it's exactly the same level as it's in the architectural model. You can see it has to think about it because it actually is doing a bit of work there. So you need to go through these one at a time. Sometimes the batch copy works, but most of the time it doesn't. They might have fixed it by now, but it hasn't been working for a while. So I'll just go through it one by one. Select this one and select entry level. So I'll just finish that, and now you can see that if I roll the cursor over the levels, they're actually in the project itself. So then we can go to the view tab and we can make a plan view for each of these new levels because they're already there. So I can just hold down shift, select them all, and if you watch over here under floor plans, well, you can't see it right now, but all those floor plans have now been created here. So we can go into each of the floor plans and work on them. Again, it's still frozen because it's just a linked model. Okay, everybody with me so far? Okay, so I'm just going to repeat that process, but this time I'm going to do it with the grid system, because we want to have the grids in there because the entire structural system depends on grids. And you can see that they've already put some columns in there on the grid. So we're going to take the architect's suggestion as to where the column is going to be, and we're just going to use it unless we have to make some radical changes to it. So I'm going to do the same process again. Go to collaborate, copy monitor, select the link, and let's see if batch copy works. If I just say, all right, forget about it. Let's just use copy again. So I'm going to go around and let's see if we can select. No, we can't. We still have to do it one by one. Okay. So we have to go one by one, go through and select all the grid lines in the project. Didn't want that one. And we'll do it vertically as well. All right, so finish that. And now you can see that the grid lines are live in the project. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to change the visibility and graphics so that it's grayed out. I'm going to change it to halftone. I'm going to change it to underlay and apply. So now you can see everything that's active in the project is in black, and everything that's not active is in grey. So you can get a very clear sense of what you're working on. Everybody with me so far? Will I keep going? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now we've got the basis of our structural system. Or did I miss out some grid lines down here? Yeah, I think I did. So let's just do those as well while we're at it. Copy. There's one. There's one. And there's one. I think that's everything, is it? Yeah. Finish. So now we have the opportunity to start inserting columns into the project. So I'm going to start by going into the structure tool, and I'm going to use this column button. Now you can just select a column, and then of course we can come in here and we can insert it wherever we want it to be. And at the moment it's coming in as a steel HEB 200 column. So we can change it to, let's just change it to this concrete column to start with. It doesn't matter what we start with, because we can always come back and change it afterwards. As long as we get a column in place, we can change it afterwards. But instead of going in and inserting them place by place, because we have a grid system, we can just select insert column at grids. So it'll insert it for us at grid intersections. So I'm just going to press that. And then it's asking me which grid lines do we want to use for grid intersections. So I'm going to say, well, okay, we want, let's say we want all of these. And we want to have this one, this one. Well, maybe I need to hold down control here. That'll make sense, wouldn't it? Let's take all of these. I can see I've missed out a grid line there. We won't worry about that too much. And let's take this one, this one, this one. Yeah. Okay, let's just say that's enough. And if I just say finish, you don't see anything in the plan view because, and I haven't figured this out yet, it's inserted columns at all those junctions, but it inserts them at -1000 for some reason, so it doesn't turn up in the plan view. So it's telling us here in the bottom, none of the created elements are visible in floor plan 1, okay? So often what you need to do, I'm just going to WT this so we get 2 screens up there. Oh, okay, that's more than 2. Let's just shut down everything except for what we need. There's one. So WT. And you can see in the 3D view, because we've made it an overlay and we've made it into a halftone, we can see all the columns behind. These tiny little dwarf columns are sitting there behind the architectural project. So I'm just going to select them, select one of them, right click, and we're going to say select all instances in project. And now we have the opportunity to change the base level and the top level and all that kind of stuff. I don't know why it inserts it at the lowest level at -1000, but it just does. I don't know why. But anyway, so let's set the top level to the 3rd floor. The entry level is fine for the base, and we'll set the offset to 0. And if I apply that, they pop up to the right position. And they also pop up in the right position on the plan view here. So you can zoom in and see that now we have some structural columns sitting on the plan view at those junctions. Okay? Does that make sense? Well, I stopped. Do you want to give it a go, and I'll give you a hand with it, and then we'll continue after this. Okay, so we got something like that now, and you can see because we made it an underlay. The columns always display in the foreground, no matter what. Even though this is a hidden line view for the architectural model, the columns still display in the foreground because we made it an underlay. So that can be a nice graphical way of showing a structure in context, depending on how you're doing things. So we've got columns in there. So the next thing we need is, and we could probably do with a few more actually. There's a big space in the middle here which isn't supported by anything, but we won't worry about that right now. So the next thing we need is some beams. So doing the same thing again, go into the structure tab and we press the beam tool, and you can see here this is also set up as a steel beam in my software. I don't know what it's set up in yours, but we can go down here and let's just change it straight away to a concrete rectangular beam. Again, it doesn't matter what type of beam you choose to start with. You can always come back and modify the type later. It's just, you know, as long as we get it in the correct position. So we've got this concrete rectangular beam set up, and then we can do the same thing again. I can just choose on grid lines. So I'm going to select on grids, and I'm going to hold down control and select this, and what are we going to? Yeah, let's just do all the we probably don't need that many, but let's just do it right now. Like that. And if I press finish, it's giving us the same warning again because it's creating them at the ground level, but it's placing them at the level that we drew them in on. And there's the nice thing about this is, depending on where it is, the beams will either be created joined to each other. I can use this little clipboard tool up here. See this little 2 pieces of paper? This is a really nice tool because it means we can copy, and then we can align our copy to, let's say, level 2 and level 3. If I press OK, it's placed beams at those levels as well, but it's automatically made the joins for you. So you can see that the join, if I just move that little thing out of the way here, the join down here where there's no column, it puts the beams together, but where there's a column in the way, it automatically joins them, so as if they would be joined in more or less diagrammatically in reality. So then we get something like that. Let's just try and zoom out a bit. You can see that this is slowing down a little bit. Now we've probably gone a little bit to town too much here on the position of them. Got too many of them, but we can always just go in afterwards. Once Revit has automatically placed them, we can just go back and delete them afterwards. So you don't have to really worry about placing them directly. You can just do it very quickly over the entire grid section, and then just delete the ones you don't need afterwards. It just makes it more efficient and easier to work that way. Yeah, we got these ones here as well. So you might end up with something like that. Okay, let's pause that again. All right. Okay. So I mean, you can play with beams and columns a lot in the same way that you can play with walls. I mean, you can trim them together. You can play with the joins. Actually, I'll talk about that afterwards. The last main thing to do with this is what they call a beam system. And the beam system is to do any repetitive set of joists or concrete slabs or anything that repeats with a specific distance between them. So let's say we wanted to put a beam system between, well, this looks very unrealistic because there's no column in the middle here, but never mind. But let's say we wanted to put a beam system between these two elements here at the top. What we can do is, let's say we wanted to make, for some reason, a steel structure spanning this area here. We just make a, am I recording this? Yes, I am. If we just make this option here, beam system, a structural beam system. So I've selected that, and I can either draw the shape of the system I want, or actually choose the primary supports. So if I press this here, I can choose this beam, this beam, this beam, and just let it draw, and then we get this beam. So I've chosen primary supports for the beam system that we want. The next thing we need to think about is, what is the direction of the beams? What direction are they going in? At the moment, this kind of triple line over here means that if I accept this beam system, all the beams will follow the length. They'll run along this shape. So I want to switch that. So we can go up to this button here called beam direction. If I select that, I can just select this line. So I want them to go across rather than along the system here. Before I finish it, we have a couple of things over here we can do. We can change the layout rule to fixed distance, fixed number, maximum spacing, and so on. You can kind of play with that as well, but usually you have a fixed distance between beams. So I'm just going to change this to let's say 1200, just to say something. We're going to justify it in the center, which means it's going to be equal distance at each end. And we're going to change the beam type to something like steel framing. Apply that, and if I accept that, you can see that it's created a steel system within the beam system there. And we can always go back and modify that. We can't, if we move now, because we've linked it to an overall beam. If I move this should, let me just see if this works. If I grab the end of this beam and move it over here, for example, I want to see if this works. Maybe it won't. Yeah, it does. It follows the beam system because we've chosen the support for the system itself. So it gives you the opportunity to have a little bit of flexibility in how you design your systems. Now if I change it, let's just see what happens if I haven't played with this for a while. So let's see if we hold both of these down. What can we do with that? So it kind of maintains the direction, but yeah, okay, that's not perfect. Anyway, never mind. But you could with that methodology, you can basically make any repeating beam system. So it could be roof joists, or it could be floor joists, or anything like that, depending on what you want to do. So those are kind of the main setup tools for the structure, just in a very basic way. Okay, let me just pause that again. Okay, just to give you a little bit more options on what the beam system can do. I did it to some of you guys yesterday, but just to show everybody else, we can insert. Go to Autodesk Seek. I'm going to put in. Let's just try precast slab. See what we get out of it. We just want to find one, make sure it's 3D rather than, yeah, so let's say this one. So I'm going to select that one and we'll download the latest one. Oh, there it is. It's already there. I'll cancel that one. I'll open that one. So it's going to upgrade it to the newest version of Revit. So this is what we've downloaded from Autodesk Seek. So it looks like a fairly standard precast slab. So I'm going to load it into the project. And now we should be able to select the beam system. If I just tab over it. Now make sure you select the system, which is that grid of lines rather than the individual beam. We should be able to modify the beam type to that precast slab, which is here. Let's say we go for the 150 by 1200. If I apply that, let's see what that does for us. Yeah, there we go. So you can see that you can quickly put in slab systems and so forth within the structural model just by using that method there. Okay. So you could go around and fill in the slab system piece by piece. I wouldn't do the entire building at once. I would define your supporting beams and make a slab system in between individual elements of it rather than do the entire building at once, because it just gets out of hand. Also, it's unlikely you can get 60-meter long precast slabs anyway. Okay. The last thing I want to do with you really is just to show you the opportunities. If I just, for example, take a beam. I mean, let's make it a steel beam because it's easy to see what's going on. Let's choose a steel beam here. And let's say we drew one here, like that. And then I'm going to draw another one like that. You can trim them together just like you can trim walls together in Revit. So I can just select one and I can use the trim tool to select this and select this. And they will hook up together. And they hook up in a way that's kind of something like that. I haven't drawn them. Obviously, I haven't drawn them straight on, so you get this kind of weird situation. Let's just change the scale there, so it's a little bit easier to see. And change the shading. Oops. So then we should be able to go into modify, and we have this little option called beam column joins. So let's have a look. If I go beam column join, you can see these, we get these little arrows down here. There's an arrow here and there's an arrow here. And that's basically asking us, how do we want to join these beams together? If I press this arrow here, it's going to shoot forward and it's actually going to miter the joint between the beams. But if I pull this one back over here, it's going to take it back, so this one has priority in the join and that's kind of thing. So this works in all beam systems from steel to timber and all that kind of stuff. So you can control how the actual elements go together at the edges afterwards. Okay? That's it. I'm not going to say anything else today, so just any questions you have.